Have you ever felt completely unqualified for what God was asking you to do? Too weak, too small, too afraid, too ordinary. I know that feeling. I lived it. My name is Gideon, and I'm going to tell you the story of how I went from a coward hiding in a winepress to a general leading an army, how the God of Israel took the weakest man from the weakest clan and used him to save an entire nation. But this isn't just my story. By the end, you'll discover 3 secrets about how God transforms fear into faith. Secrets that could change everything about how you see your own weakness. Come, let me take you back to the darkest days of Israel. Imagine a land stripped bare, fields that once flowed with grain, now trampled, vineyards that once burst with fruit, now plundered. Every year, just as the harvest ripened, they came, the Midianites, sweeping in from the east like locusts, so numerous their camels couldn't be counted. Judges 6:3-4 describes it. Whenever Israel planted crops, the Midianites and Amalekites would come up and destroy the land's produce, leaving nothing for Israel. No sheep, no cattle, no donkeys. For 7 years my people lived in terror. We abandoned our homes and hid in mountain caves and strongholds. We were starving. We were broken. We had forgotten what it felt like to live without fear. And why had this happened? Judges 6:1 tells the painful truth. The Israelites did evil in the sight of the Lord, and he gave them into the hands of Midian. We had chased after foreign gods. We had forgotten the one who brought us out of Egypt, and now we were reaping what we had sown. But even in judgment, God had not forgotten us. Even in the darkness, he was preparing something none of us expected. He was preparing me, though I was the last person anyone would have chosen. Picture this, a winepress carved into the ground, hidden from view. Winepresses were meant for crushing grapes, not threshing wheat. But I wasn't looking for efficiency, I was looking for invisibility. I was so afraid of the Midianites that I couldn't even thresh my grain on the open threshing floor where the wind could separate wheat from chaff. Instead, I crouched low in that pit, beating out what little wheat we had, hoping no one would see me. This was my life. Hiding, surviving, afraid, and then a voice. Judges 6:12 records the words that changed everything. The Lord is with you, mighty warrior. I looked up, and there sat a figure under the oak tree, an angel of the Lord, and he was looking directly at me. Mighty warrior. Was this a joke? I didn't feel mighty. I felt pathetic. I was hiding in a hole, terrified of the very enemies this stranger seemed to think I could fight. Have you ever had God speak something over you that felt completely disconnected from your reality? That's where I was. The gap between his words and my self-perception couldn't have been wider. But here's the first secret I learned. God doesn't call you based on who you are. He calls you based on who he's going to make you. I should have fallen on my face in worship. Instead, I argued. Judges 6:13. I said to the angel, if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened? Where are all his wonders that our fathers told us about? Do you hear the bitterness? The doubt? I was essentially accusing God of abandonment. Our ancestors spoke of a God who parted seas and made walls fall. Where was that God now? And yet, and this is the part that still amazes me, the Lord didn't rebuke me. He didn't strike me down for my insolence. Instead, Judges 6:14 says, the Lord turned to him and said, go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you? He answered my complaint with a commission. He responded to my doubt with a calling. But I wasn't done objecting. Judges 6:15 records my excuse. But Lord, how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family. The weakest of the weak, the smallest of the small. Surely God had the wrong man. His answer silenced every objection. Judges 6:16. I will be with you, and you will strike down all the Midianites together. Not, you are strong enough. Not, you have what it takes. Simply, I will be with you. Here's the second secret. Your inadequacy is not an obstacle to God. It's his preferred starting point. He chooses the weak so that when victory comes, no one can credit anyone but him. Before I could fight the Midianites, God had a different battle for me, a closer one, a harder one. That very night, the Lord gave me an assignment. Judges 6:25-26 records it. Take your father's bull, tear down your father's altar to Baal, cut down the Asherah pole beside it, and build a proper altar to the Lord on that hilltop. My father's altar, in my father's town, among my father's neighbors. I want you to understand what God was asking. Before I could lead Israel against an external enemy, I had to confront the idolatry in my own household. The enemy out there was real, But the enemy in here, the false worship we had embraced, that had to go first. I obeyed. But I'll be honest with you, Judges 6:27 admits that I did it at night because I was too afraid to do it by day. Still afraid, still weak, but obedient. And when morning came, the town erupted. They discovered their altar demolished, the Asherah pole burned, and an offering to the God of Israel smoking on the hilltop. They traced it back to me. Judges 6:30. They demanded my death. But my father whose altar I had destroyed, stood up for me. In Judges 6:31 he said, "If Baal is really a god, let him defend himself." Something was shifting. The idol had been exposed as powerless, and I had taken my first step of costly obedience. Ask yourself, what altar might God be asking you to tear down before he can use you for something greater? What needs to be confronted in your own life before you can face the battles outside? Even after the altar, even after my father defended me, even after seeing Baal's impotence, I was still afraid. The Spirit of the Lord came upon me. Judges 6:34 says he clothed himself with me. I blew the trumpet. The tribes began to gather. Thousands of men responded. And still I doubted. So I did something that reveals both my weakness and God's patience. I asked for a sign. Then I asked for another. Judges 6:36-37. I said to God, "If you will save Israel by my hand, as you have promised, I will place a wool fleece on the threshing floor. If there is dew, only on the fleece, and all the ground is dry, then I will know." Morning came. The fleece was soaked, the ground was dry. But was it enough? No, my fear ran deeper than one miracle could reach. Judges 6:39. I asked God not to be angry, and I requested the opposite. Let the ground be wet and the fleece dry. And God did it. Again, I'm not telling you this to encourage testing God. I'm telling you because it reveals something beautiful about his character. He met me in my weakness. He didn't disqualify me for my doubt. He patiently confirmed his word until I could take the next step. This is the third secret. God is more patient with your process than you are. He knows what you need to keep moving forward. Finally, I believed enough to march. 32,000 men gathered with me at the spring of Harod, looking down at the Midianite camp in the valley below. Their tents stretched as far as the eye could see. Their camels were like sand on the seashore. But we had numbers. We had courage now. We were ready. And then God said something that made no sense. Judges 7:2. You have too many men. I cannot deliver Midian into their hands, or Israel would boast that their own strength saved them. Too many? We were already outnumbered. But God wasn't interested in a fair fight. He wanted an impossible one. First reduction. Anyone who was afraid could go home. Judges 7:3 tells us 22,000 left. 22,000. 2/3 of my army walked away. I had 10,000 remaining. Still not enough for God. Second reduction. God told me to take them down to the water to drink. Those who cupped water to their mouths and stayed alert, keep them. Those who knelt down to drink carelessly, send them home. Judges 7:7. Only 300 men remained. 300 against an army that couldn't be counted. Have you ever watched God strip away everything you thought you needed, every advantage, every backup plan, every human resource, until all that remained was Him? That was His purpose. He wanted a victory so impossible that no one could say, "My own hand saved me." This would be the Lord's battle, fought by the Lord's power through the weakest possible instruments. The night before the attack, God knew I still needed encouragement. Judges 7:10-11. He told me to sneak down to the Midianite camp and listen. So I crept through the darkness with my servant Purah, close enough to hear the enemy sentries talking, and what I heard changed everything. One soldier was telling his friend about a dream. Judges 7:13. He had seen a round loaf of barley bread tumbling into the camp, striking a tent and flattening it completely. His friend's interpretation, Judges 7:14. This can only be the sword of Gideon. God has given the Midianites into his hand. The enemy was already afraid. God had gone before me. I returned to my 300 men and divided them into 3 companies. Our weapons, not swords, not spears, torches hidden inside clay jars, and trumpets. Imagine the scene. The middle watch of the night, the darkest hour when sleep is deepest. 300 men surrounding a vast camp. On my signal, we smashed the jars, held high the blazing torches, blew the trumpets, and shouted, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon." Judges 7:21-22 describes the chaos. Every man stood in his place while the whole camp ran and cried and fled. The Lord caused the Midianites to turn on each other with their swords. We didn't swing a single blade. We just stood there, holding fire and making noise, while God threw the enemy into panic and self-destruction. The Midianite army, the terror of 7 years, was shattered in a single night. I've lived many years since that night. I've had time to reflect on what it all meant, and I keep coming back to the jars. We hid our light inside clay jars until the moment of revelation. The jars had to be broken for the light to shine. The vessels were ordinary, fragile, common, worthless on their own, but they carried the fire. Centuries after my time, a man named Paul would write words that echo this truth. In 2 Corinthians 4:7, he said, "We have this treasure in jars of clay to show that the surpassing power belongs to God and not to us." That's what I was. That's what you are. Clay jars. Breakable, ordinary, unimpressive. But when God places his fire inside you, and when life breaks you open, that's when his light blazes through the cracks. That's when the enemy flees. That's when the impossible happens. And here is something I couldn't have known in my day, but my life was a shadow of someone greater, a deliverer who would come not with 300, but alone, not to defeat Midianites, but to defeat sin and death itself, not with torches and trumpets, but with a cross. Jesus, the true mighty warrior, didn't hide in a winepress. He walked willingly toward his battle, and like my 300, he won the victory not through strength, but through what looked like weakness. A crucifixion that seemed like defeat became the triumph of the ages. When you feel weak, when you feel hidden, when you feel like the least likely candidate for anything significant, remember that God's power is made perfect in weakness. That's what he did with me. That's what he did through his Son. That's what he can do through you. So what have I learned? What can I pass on to you from the winepress to the battlefield? First, God sees you differently than you see yourself. He called me mighty warrior when I was hiding in fear. He speaks to your potential, not your present condition. Start believing his words over your own assessment. Second, your weakness is not a disqualification, it's a qualification. God chooses the small, the overlooked, the trembling, because when he wins through weakness, no one can steal his glory. Stop waiting until you feel strong enough. You never will be. That's the point. Third, obedience often comes before clarity. I had to tear down the altar before I understood the full plan. I had to reduce my army before I saw the strategy. Sometimes the next step is all he gives you. Take it. Fourth, God is patient with your process. I asked for sign after sign. He gave them. Your doubt doesn't disqualify you. It's part of the journey. Keep pressing in. Fifth, the breaking releases the light. Your pain, your failures, your insufficiency. These are the cracks through which his glory shines. Don't resent your brokenness. Surrender it to him. I was the weakest of the weak, hiding, doubting, afraid, and God used me to deliver a nation. Not because of who I was, because of who he is. If you're watching this and you feel hidden in your own winepress, too small, too afraid, too ordinary, hear this. The same God who found me under that oak tree knows exactly where you are. He's not waiting for you to become strong. He's waiting for you to become willing. Here's my invitation. This week, ask God to show you one altar you need to tear down, one step of obedience you've been avoiding. Take it, even if you have to do it at night, even if you're still afraid. And if this story stirred something in you, share it with someone else who's hiding, someone who needs to hear that God specializes in using the unlikely. Subscribe to this channel and join the journey through the treasures of God's Word. Every week, we walk through stories of flawed, frightened people whom God transformed, because that's the story he's still writing today. Until next time, may you have the courage to step out of your winepress. I am Gideon, and now you know my story.